Thinking, Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman is an exploration into the dual systems that shape our thoughts and decisions. Kahneman refers to these as System 1 and System 2. System 1 operates automatically and quickly, with little or no effort and no sense of voluntary control. This system is responsible for our gut reactions and immediate judgments. For example, if you see a car rapidly approaching, you instantly feel a sense of danger without conscious thought. System 2, on the other hand, allocates attention to the effortful mental activities that demand it, including complex computations. It's slower, more deliberate, and more logical. When you solve a math problem or complete a complex task, System 2 is at work. Part 1. Two systems. Kahneman starts by introducing these systems, showing how they shape our interactions with the world. He illustrates the effort and limitations of attention in System 2, highlighting how we often default to the quicker, less effortful System 1. Through examples like the Muller-Lyer illusion and the Stroop test, he demonstrates how these systems can conflict, leading to cognitive errors. The book delves into how System 1 forms associations and detects patterns, often creating coherent stories from incomplete information. This associative nature can lead to the availability heuristic, where people judge the frequency or likelihood of events based on how easily examples come to mind. For instance, after seeing news reports of airplane crashes, people might overestimate their frequency. Kahneman also discusses cognitive ease, explaining that when our brains process information easily, we are more likely to believe it is true. Familiarity, simplicity, and clarity all contribute to cognitive ease, making us more susceptible to believing repeated statements or smoothly presented arguments. As the narrative progresses, Kahneman explores how System 1 jumps to conclusions based on limited evidence, often substituting simpler questions for more complex ones. This heuristic substitution is illustrated through examples like the Linda problem, where people assume specific scenarios are more likely than general ones based on representativeness, even when this defies logic. Part 2. Heuristics and Biases. Moving on to heuristics and biases, Kahneman examines how people often draw erroneous conclusions from small samples, a fallacy driven by the belief that small samples accurately represent the population. This section also covers anchoring, where initial information influences subsequent judgments, as shown in experiments where people's estimates are swayed by arbitrary starting points. The availability heuristic is further explored, with examples showing how emotionally charged or memorable events are perceived as more frequent. This emotional influence extends to risk perception, where personal experiences and vivid examples disproportionately affect our assessment of dangers. Kahneman introduces the concept of base rate neglect, where people ignore statistical information in favor of anecdotal evidence. This is evident in the Tom W. example, where descriptions lead people to make judgments based on stereotypes rather than actual probabilities. Similarly, the conjunction fallacy demonstrates how specific scenarios are incorrectly deemed more likely than general ones. The book then addresses causal thinking, showing how we often prefer causal explanations over statistical ones, leading to errors in judgment. Kahneman also explains regression to the mean, the phenomenon where extreme cases tend to revert to the average over time, a concept often overlooked in predictions and evaluations. Part 3. Overconfidence. In discussing overconfidence, Kahneman highlights the illusion of understanding and hindsight bias, where people believe they predicted outcomes after they occur. He critiques the illusion of validity, where confidence in predictions exceeds their accuracy, using examples from stock market analysis and expert predictions. The narrative contrasts intuitive judgments with statistical algorithms, demonstrating the latter's superiority in many cases. Kahneman outlines conditions under which expert intuition can be trusted, emphasizing the importance of a stable environment and extensive practice, as seen in fields like chess. To improve decision-making, Kahneman advocates for the use of the outside view, which relies on base rates and reference classes to counteract the planning fallacy, where people underestimate the time required for projects. He explores how optimism and overconfidence drive entrepreneurial ventures and economic activity, illustrating the benefits and pitfalls of these traits in the engine of capitalism. Part 4. Choices. Kahneman then critiques expected utility theory, introducing prospect theory to explain how people value gains and losses differently. He discusses loss aversion, where losses are felt more intensely than equivalent gains, influencing risk-taking behavior. The endowment effect is explained, showing how ownership increases the perceived value of items. This is illustrated through experiments where people demand more money to sell items they own than they would pay to acquire them. The book also covers the fourfold pattern of risk attitudes, explaining how people are risk-averse in gains and risk-seeking in losses, with high probabilities exaggerated and low probabilities ignored. This leads to skewed decision-making, especially regarding rare events. Kahneman advocates for creating risk policies to manage decisions more rationally, avoiding ad hoc judgments influenced by emotions and cognitive biases. He describes mental accounting, where people separate money into different accounts, affecting their spending and saving behaviors. Preference reversals are explored, showing how choices change based on presentation, even when the underlying information is the same. Framing effects further illustrate how the way choices are presented influences decisions. Part 5. In the final part, Kahneman introduces the experiencing self and the remembering self, highlighting their different perspectives on happiness and satisfaction. He explains how people evaluate experiences based on the peak-end rule, where the most intense point and the end of an experience disproportionately influence our memory of it. Kahneman concludes by summarizing the key insights and emphasizing the importance of understanding and mitigating the cognitive biases and errors that affect our decision-making. He stresses the value of both systems of thought and the need for a balanced approach to thinking and decision-making.